Today I will present العيد كحلول صابر بن حرصلة concerning from Leafree Laboratory Computer Science Department from Biskra University, Algeria. This work is concerning parallel dynamic multi-objective optimization evolutionary algorithms. In this presentation, we tackle some points started by introduction. Then we present some most relevant related works, and after that we introduce the dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm. And in the fourth section, we present the proposed parallel version of dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm. And results and experimental study are discussed in the fifth section. At the end, we conclude with evaluation of the results and we discuss some perspectives. So, multi-objective optimization problems are problems that have more than one objective to be achieved because of their complexity. They also require performing a procedure of decision making because it looks simultaneously for a set of approximated solutions to each objective function, and these functions may be in conflict. In addition to that, multi-objective evolutionary algorithms are one of the 6 methods which are intended for this kind of problem that share the common purpose, which is searching for uniformly distributed, near optimal, and well-extended Pareto fronts for a given multi-objective optimization problem.
We cannot hear you now. Please check your mic. Dr. Marwa, we cannot hear you. Dr. Marwa, can you hear me? We cannot hear you. Please check your mic if your mic is open. Yeah, it's okay. So, but still we cannot hear you. استاذ بريك صوته واصل لأننا ما واصل عندي الصوت.
لا دكتور ماشي صوت. إذا تريد نعرض الورقة المسجلة.
لأنه يظهر لي وفي المايك ما هي شغال يعني.
نعم لاحظت. نعم
أيوة.
بالضبط. بس إذا نعرض الورقة المسجلة وفي المناقشة بعدين.
خلينا نشوف. دكتور مروة, can you check your voice setting because we cannot hear you. Otherwise, we are going to play the recording. Still, your voice is not coming. Okay, break. You can play the recording. So, Ms. Marwa, we are going to play your recording instead of live presentation.
اوكي.
اوكي. Yeah, Marwa, can you try?
Then we present most relevant related works
بريك قدمها شوي لان هذه عدتها وصلت للشريحه الثالثه تقريبا.
of those algorithms to obtain efficient
هو دكتور فيديو هذا.
execution time mentioned
ايوه.
one of their In our presentation, we propose parallel version of dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm to enhance their sequential version in terms of three criteria: improving the objective space, minimization of computational time, and conversion to the desired population size for satisfying the user requirements, getting optimal solution in minimum execution time. In the literature, many state-of-the-art of multi-objective evolutionary algorithms were parallelized. In this table, we summarize some of the most relevant works in the parallelization of multi-objective evolutionary algorithm. Dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm is based on adaptive cell-based rank density estimation, where the objective space is considered as a grid and the number of its cells depends on the dimension of multi-objective optimization problem and the grid scale in each dimension. Dynamic multi-objective evolution algorithm consists of four main functions. The first function is the initial cell-based rank density calculation sham which initializes principal variables as initial population size to create a population of initial individuals, calculate cell width, initialize objective functions, and create a grid which contains a number of cells defined in each dimension depending on the grid scale given by the multi-objective problem. The second function is population growth strategy, which aims to make population size bigger than the initial one to increase the probability of obtaining better individuals. Dynamic multi-objective evolution algorithm uses crossover and mutation functions to create new offspring. The third main function of dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm is the population decline strategy, which reverses the work population growth strategy by decreasing population size using the killing technique to kill each individual that has an age bigger than the age threshold defined by the multi-objective optimization problem to get finally the desired population with the desired size. The last main function is the objective space compression strategy to get the real objective space of Pareto front individuals. Dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm should start by examining the three stopping criteria. The rank values of all cells are 1, the objective space cannot be compressed anymore, and finally each resulting non-dominated cell contains a given population size per unit volume. The proposed paradigmatic multi-objective optimization evolution algorithm is based on multiprocessing framework and master-slave technique. The master process creates n processes as it's shown in this figure. Paradigmatic multi-objective evolution algorithm divides the generation number into n processes, and each process executes dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm with number of generation divided by n generations. Then the best results of one of processes are selected. Both dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm and the parallel version are implemented using oriented objects programming paradigm and using a set of parameters cited in this table. The obtained results are presented in this figure as subplots collecting dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm and the parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm curves. These results depict the comparison of performance metrics like population size, rank density, and objective space. In both dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm and the parallel version, rank converges to B1. The obtained population size from running parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm achieves a smaller size than in the sequential version. The objective space that is obtained from running the parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm is more improved than the one of the sequential counterpart because it converges to smaller values. In addition to that, parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm outperforms the dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm such that it improves the objective space in short-running CPU time. However, the number of solutions in the parity front obtained from running the parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm is smaller than the obtained from running the sequential version. As conclusion, we can say that multi-objective evolutionary algorithms are one of the heuristic methods which are intended for multi-objective optimization problems, and the proposed parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm outperforms the dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm in terms of three criteria: improving objective space, minimizing computational time, and conversion to the desired population size. As a future research direction, we intend to apply the parallel dynamic multi-objective evolutionary algorithm on a real-world problem and compare it with other state-of-the-art algorithms. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Can you
Thank
now?
you. Yeah,
I
thank
try
you.
to try to connect with my mobile phone.
Yeah, by mobile phone it was really clear.
Yes.
But we have played now your recording, and inshallah ta'ala later on we'll give you a chance to answer the questions. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Marwa, for your presentation, and was about the parallel dynamic multi-objective optimization evolutionary algorithm. So thank you very much, Dr. Marwa. And now we are going to move to, thank you very much. We are going to move to the first paper, which is paper number 37, with Dr. Sarvana Kumar and also Dr. Ananta Sivaprakasam Kambash. Their paper is about the band reduction and segmentation of hyper spectral satellite image using RTM techniques. So, Dr. Sarvana, you have 10 minutes to present your paper.
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I can see you. And
yes, sir.
Just...
Good afternoon to everyone.
Yeah. Just yeah, share your presentation.
Yes,
good. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it visible, sir? Screen is visible?
Yeah, visible.
Okay, sir.
Just start the presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. V. Sarvana Kumar, currently working as Associate Professor Srinidhi Institute of Science and Technology, which is located in Hyderabad, India. My research topic is segmentation on hyperspectral remote sensing satellite data. Here, I am going to present about the band reduction and segmentation of hyperspectral satellite image using one of the unsupervised algorithm, that is robust K-mean technique. My colleague, Dr. S. Ananda Sivaprakasam, is currently working as a professor in Rajalakshmi Engineering College, Chennai, India. He is also joined as an attendee. And Mrs. Kavita Saravanan, she is my wife. She is currently doing a research scholar. She is a research scholar in Manamani Sundaram University. My paper ID is 37. Okay. So what's the objectives, abstract, introductions? What are these? I'll include in this presentation. So the main objective is to segment the hyperspectral image based on the certain categories. What are the, that is based upon certain features, that is surface, green, shuffle, smooth, and celery, etc. And moreover, I have to determine the number of clusters in advance, because here I am using the unsupervised clustering. The unsupervised clustering method is working based on the number of cluster based on. Okay, so we have to determine the number of clusters in advance. At the same time, reduce the time complexity, because processing of hyperspectral image is very big task, because it is not a 3-band. It contains more than 100 bands. So it is taking more time to processing, number of hours. Sometimes some images take number of days. So I reduce. And moreover, I can the algorithm which improve the accuracy of previous existing method, and performance analysis among the clustering methods. I applied a number of different unsupervised clustering methods. I can compare the clustering result as a in conclusion. So in the abstract, hyperspectral dimensional reduction is a significant pre-processing phase preceding the complex data analysis. Because I'm first one, if you want to process the hyperspectral, the dimensional, because it contains more than 100 bands, so we have to reduce it for making quick processing. The present work is address the design and implementation of the NEAT technique for dimensional reduction and segmentation on remotely sensed hyperspectral scene. That's the input. My input is hyperspectral scene that is captured by remotely. The enhanced clustering method, that is robust K-mean, is applied in interband as well as intraband. That is two phases applied. Band reduction I have one phase, as well as segmentation is another phase. In band reduction as well as segmentation, I applied this robust K-mean algorithm. So the band reduction and segmentation have performed by this robust K-mean algorithm. The hyperspectral band or cluster and a band that has uppermost variance from each cluster is singled out. Based upon the maximum variance, I pick the one band from the clusters. So that what the number of clusters, if I define 10, the 100 band can be reduced into 10 band, because I only select only one band which are the clusters. The process can reduce the set of bands. Furthermore, robust K-means accompanies the segregation process on this reduced band. So I reduce into less than 10 band. So now I can apply the robust K-mean algorithm and the reduced band. Now execution of this technique is assessed in various circumstances. I can compare that how it's working. Okay. Introduction part. So what's in by remote sensing satellite data? There's the scene which is captured by the satellite remote sensing. Okay. And how it's differ from. So I am my process is carried out talking about the hyperspectral image, how it's different from multispectral. So first of all, we can go through our broadband. So the visible part is only small part. Okay, the infrared waves is not able to visible, but multispectral. It is also one of the remote sensing satellite data, but it is a multispectral. The multispectral default contains a 7 band, whereas hyperspectral can have more than 100 band. That's one definition. And apart from that, how multispectral is different from hyperspectral is multispectral definitely have 7 band, but the band, the distance of each band is vary. It is not in uniform mode. You see the distance, and this band size is 0.4 to 0.52 nanometers. This band size is 0.5 to 0.6 nanometers. Okay, whereas hyperspectral, it is uniform. The 100 bands are uniform. If it is not uniform, it is not listed in hyperspectral, it moved to multispectral. So feature work may be carried out in ultraspectral, which contains more than 1000 bands. Okay. So in this is the different types of the spectral data are available. The main point is the different frequency in multispectral imaging is distributed in irregular fashion, whereas in hyperspectral it is all uniform space. Okay, that's the main difference. Here, the wavelength also mention it. The difference is 10 nanometers. Okay, for each band, the difference is 10 nanometers. The wavelength is measured by nanometers. The unit is nanometer. So here, in this, what we say, the that is the camera is fitted under the satellite. It captures the surface of the air. It not only covers the topmost, it also extracts the more information. That is, the picture is worth 2000 watt, whereas if you process in hyperspectral image, it is a processing of 1000 pictures. Okay. So how we process it? So the reflectance of. Okay. So the wave and the reflectance of the soil is mentioned in this wavelength. The water, if available, it can represent in the reflectance maybe here. So vegetation occur means it the reflect maybe here. Okay, in this manner we have to processing it. Okay, here it's a represent as a dimension, number of dimensions. So it is not a default one. The different camera maybe hyperspectral cameras is available. So my input also I am using more than 5 images. This 5 images size is different. That band size also different. Okay. So image segmentation I am using unsupervised clustering technique. Exclusive overlappings are there in unsupervised. K-mean is listed under exclusive, whereas when we use a fuzzy C-mean, it is a overlapping. But I am using here this work deals about the robust K-means. Okay, it is an extension of the K-means. How its extension mean? It is working based upon the K-means. But when processing, whenever the processing, we can apply the K-means. Sometimes it may outlier may be occur. So remove if outlier is occur, we can remove it. That is called as robust K-means.
Sorry, Doctor, for interruption. I can see that you have 66 slides and we have only 4 minutes remaining. So
okay,
please,
okay, sir. Okay, sir. I am going very fast.
Yes.
So I research review. Okay, okay, sir. Now, so number of clusters finding. What are the problems I talk about? So I just now the proposed method. I want to explain about the proposed methods. So here I make it interband as well as intraband. In first phase, you can receive the input image, that is the hyperspectral image. We can extract the features based upon 3 parameters: median, standard deviation, and variance. And based upon these 3 features, we can construct the matrix. The RKM is applied on that feature matrix. And when we apply RKM, we have to define the number of clusters. Here I define number of clusters 3 because I want to make the hyperspectral image into 3-band images. Whatever size it may be 100 or 200, whatever it is, we can make this hyperspectral images into 3-band images. So what's the beauty of the 3-band making converter means it is easy to understand about the images. It is visible. So we can easily understand about. So segmentation is second phase I apply. So select one band from each cluster that has a maximum variance. So that's why we receive the reduced band and a decorrelated stage. That is, we have to enhance the quality of the images what we receive in the 3-band. Okay, and display the 3-band images. And again, I apply the robust K-mean. In these situations, I applied the number of clusters may be defined based upon the ground truth image of the particular images. Sometimes in the ground truth image may be clustered into 7, or sometimes based upon the input image, we can processing it to 9 or 10. So we get the result. Okay. Here, a robust K-means, Professor Carson introduced an extension of K-means algorithm that remove the outlier based upon the Lagrange's parameters. Okay, so what the thing is, even though it remove the outlier, some loss may be occur. It is it will not affect the main content. So unwanted content may be removed. That's the thing. So based upon the Lagrange's parameter, it is processing. The goal is to retain the maximum amount of relevant information using the Lagrange parameter lambda. So how the robust band reductions are performing. So number of clusters, 3 K initial cluster is applying. If there is any outlier, remove the outlier, compute the new clusters, pick out one band from each cluster, and reduce band set is available. Okay. So the algorithm is read the hyperspectral scene, construct the feature matrix, define the number of clusters as 3, apply robust K-mean in first phase, and pick out one band which are cluster, which contain a maximum variance, reduce the set of band, decorrelated, that is enhancing the quality of the image of which when we receive as a 3-band, display that 3-band images, apply robust K-mean as a segmentation process, display the segmentation image, stop. This is the algorithm. So input Salinas Valley, that is here, I'm when we take the photo in direct, that is photograph taken at the site during the data collection is like this one, but when we see our input is in this way only. That is, a satellite capture the data is in this way, but actual scene is in this way. Okay, that's the difference. So we have to here only 1 pixel carrying the size is, you see, 1 pixel carrying size is it contains the Salina contains 2 to 4 pixel band. So 224 bands are there. We are processing the pixel 1. Okay. So another one is the Salinas A. The Salinas A is a small part of the Salinas Valley. This square box, no, that is a small. This image is called as a Salinas A. The whole image is called as a Salinas value. This small part is called as a Salinas A value. And Indian pints and some other thing I use there. I included the size, maximum size. So the Salinas A size is 83 cross 86, which contains 204 band, where Indian pints is 145 cross 145, which contains the band size is 200. And Valley is 512 into 217. The size, band size is 204. And Pavia center size is 103. And Pavia center band is 102. So I am processing this 5 input. Okay. So now applying the robust K-means, what I received in the middle part at the first stage, 3-1 images is this part. And again, I applied the same robust K-means. What the result I received for Salinas A value. Salinas A value. Salinas A, Indian Pines, Pavia University, Pavia Center. So time taken is executed. These are all my previous methods. K-means used for optimization is taking 85 seconds. In the unit is in second, but here in the robust K-means I take just less than 10 seconds. Okay. Pavia Center is a big, very big images because it contains 1096 into 715. Band is 102. It taking K-means normally taking how much 1900, 1900, whereas robust K-means apply 100. Almost part is reduced. So one more bit when I processing these ones, if the pixel is reduced, the total size is that is 83 cross 86 size is 71300 when we process in previous method. But when we apply robust K-means and robust K-means, I received only 3631. Almost 2500 pixels are lost. Okay, because I'm applying a robust K-means, it's a trimmed process. Whenever outlier is occur, we have to remove the outlier. Okay, so for all this scenario is repeated in all cases. So I conclude here. One more thing is, but image wise, it's a different. K-means when particle swarm optimization, the result I will receive, it is also my work. When I apply fuzzy cement plus the particle swarm, at the moreover robust K-means, here I found it was more better than previous processing. Okay, it segregated the in this level it segregated somewhat more than previous existing methods. That's all. It's my conclusion.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
This is my publication and the references are included. Thank you. If you have any queries, you can call me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your interesting topic and your quick presentation. Unless you have too many slides, mashallah. Inshallah, I will keep question for the end of the session. Now we are going to move to Dr. Melissa Usaid. I can see your name here, so please prepare your presentation. She's going to present about educational lexical resource enrichment using machine learning classifier. She is from Algeria, so please go ahead.
Okay, but I can't. Okay.
Yeah, Doctor, you can stop your sharing and now. So also you have 10 minutes.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So hello everyone and welcome to my presentation in this International Arab Conference on Information Technology. My name is Isa Usaid and I am PhD student in the Computer Science Department at Maud Ma'mar University of Tizi Ouzou in Algeria. In this presentation, I will describe an approach to enrich an educational lexical research, DICU, that we have already developed for opinion mining using machine learning classifier. So the outline of this presentation is as follows. After an introduction, we will present the lexical research DICU. Then the objective and the main purpose of our study will be given. After that, we will give the enrichment method of DICU to get DICU2. We will evaluate this method. Finally, the conclusion and the perspective of the work will be given. So opinion mining is one of the most popular topics today in the natural language processing and artificial intelligence domains. It aims to analyze people's emotions, feelings, humor, appreciation, among other things. It covers a wide field of applications such as business, politics, medicine, and education. And to detect the sentiment conveyed by the opinion, Opinion mining uses different approaches. In the study, we are interested in what we call lexical resources. So what are lexical resources? Lexical resources are knowledge collections about words, their meanings, their uses, and their polarities. And the most popular lexical resource that is used to detect polarity within opinions is SentiWordNet, which classifies the text into positive, negative, and neutral. But as we know, words orientation can change according to the context in which they are used. So to have a better opinions classification from a particular domain, it is necessary to have lexical resources specific to this domain. This allows the improvement of the opinion detection process. So to study opinions in the field of education, we have the lexical resource DICU. What is DICU? DICU is a French lexical resource dedicated to educational opinion mining, consisting of terms with their respective polarity scores. As we can see on the figure, it's the combination of word sense sets with their corresponding polarities in SentiWordNet. So this work has the objective of the improvement of the polarity score, the lexical research DICU that we have already developed, to have a better classification of opinions from the field of education. To do this, we have followed this method, which consists of 3 steps, which are the construction of an opinion corpus named EDUCA, the generation of 8 opinions classification models, and the recalculation of DICU polarities. So the first step is the construction of an opinion corpus. In this step, we build a corpus of 20,000 comments named EDUCA, collected from various sources in the field of education. This corpus was manually annotated according to 3 classes of opinions: positive, negative, and neutral, depending on the nuance of the opinion expressed in the comment. So for example, we have I love Academy in PHP is annotated positive. Your method is very difficult to understand, it's annotated negative. And the last comment is, I think you need to change the word environment is annotated as neutral. So the second step consists on the generation of 8 opinions classification models. So first we prepare the EDUCA corpus, and this by removing the stop words, punctuation, ERLAs, special characters, etc. Then we extract new informative data, and this by implementing several methods such as counts and TF-EDF. And we also use the word embedding method, which captures the semantics of words and their context. It gives the vectorial representation of words by allowing ones with similar meanings to have a similar representation. So once the feature extraction is done, we have divided the EDUCA corpus into 2 sets: a training set with 50,000 comments for training 8 classifiers to have opinions classification models. So in this study, we have used 8 classifiers, which are KNN, SVM, naive Bayes, decision tree, random forest, AdaBoost, SGD, and MLB classifier. So it optimized the classifier by selecting optimal value of hyperparameters for classifiers. And this we obtained 8 classification models. We use the EDUCA test set with 5,000 comments to evaluate the generated models. The objective is to use these models for the recalculation of DICU sense-set polarities and got new lexical resource, DICU2. So to recalculate the new polarities of DICU sense-sets, we have extracted the sense-sets and classified them with the 8 generated models. This allowed us to obtain new polarities given by models. We extract the original polarities of the sense-sets from the lexical resource DICU, and we calculate the new polarities by multiplying the polarities given by the classification models by beta and adding to this the original polarities of the sense-sets multiplied by alpha. For this study, alpha and beta are fixed to 0.5. Then we have assigned for each sense-set of DICU new polarities and get a new lexical resource DICU2. Then we proceeded to the evaluation of this new lexical resource. So to do this, we have classified EDUCA corpus according to DICU polarities. After that, we have classified EDUCA corpus according to DICU2 polarities. And then we have compared these 2 classification results. The classification is based on the use of a symbolic classification method, which receives as input a free opinion text and gives as output classification of this text as shown on the figure. So each comment of the EDUCA corpus is divided into a set of words. These words are searched on the lexical resource. We will find their respective polarity value. So to get the new polarity, to get the polarities of a comment, we have simply at the stage of our research summed the polarities of the words of its composition. So the classification of the input opinion is done according to the highest value of its polarities. From the results, we notice an improvement in performance of DQ2 compared to DQ, since we have a higher accuracy, precision, and F measure as shown on the figure.
Sorry, Dr. Melissa, you have
Okay.
just 1 minute remaining.
Okay. In the end, we presented in this study an approach allowing the enrichment of the lexical research DQ that we have already developed using Wolf and SentiWordNet. So a better classification rate is obtained. As future research work, we are interested in improving DQ for opinion classification, even for other domains. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa Said, for your presentation and for your valuable paper. And now we are going to move to paper number 80 with, I can see Dr. Hamza Khan. So please prepare your presentation. He is going to present about unsupervised topic-aware document level semantic representation for document clustering. And he is from Pakistan. So please go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I hope the slide is visible.
Not yet.
Is it visible now?
Still not yet. Not coming.
So is it visible?
Yeah. Yeah. Now go ahead.
Sure. So our topic is unsupervised topic-aware document level semantic representation for document clustering. I'm Hamza Khan along with Dr. Mohammad Rafi, Hassan Shakil, Hayar Nadeen. We're from the National University of Computer and Emerging Sciences, Pakistan. To begin with, text representation is a vital task in NLP, and document clustering itself is an unsupervised technique in which we partition a corpus into distinguishable subcollections. Now, clustering is very sensitive to the way documents are represented, and hence our paper investigates at a model that is robust and semantically rich. The problem statement is that we have to break a heterogeneous corpus into homogeneous clusters. These clusters have to be meaningful, and we've seen that in earlier works. The lexical features did not include the meaning of the text, and this lack of semantics led to fairly poor clusters. We're presented with two challenges. The number one challenge is to capture the word-to-word relationships of the documents and the semantics and the syntactics of the document. And using that, the paper can be applied in many fields, making the natural processing easier and in areas of machine learning and data analysis. This is the overview of our pipeline. We begin with the corpus. We process it using stemming and lemmatization. We tokenize the documents and we identify the topics. We build a word sized disambiguation graph and extract lexical chains. And through a scoring mechanism, which we'll see, we apply boosted k-means to generate the clusters. And then we evaluate them on purity and F-score. So to explain this, I will be using a running example. This hasn't been pre-processed so that it's easier to understand. We begin with extracting the nouns from the text. Nouns help us to give a fuller idea of the text. And as you can see that we've extracted these nouns using WordNet, which is a lexical database. The text has been boiled down into just a few nouns, and this not only helps lowering the dimensionality, but also helps us in improving the clusters. But still, nouns are ambiguous. As you can see that each noun has a few synonyms. And to make sure that we know which synonym is being referred to, we use the help of WordNet to find the synonyms or the concepts of nouns. Each noun is broken into 3 concepts. However, if we use these 3 concepts, we're faced with 2 problems. One, the dimensionality explodes. Second, we add noise to the data. So let's consider the example help. It has 3 concepts: aid, assistant, and aid. So now we use a scoring mechanism, as you can see, which uses the Wu-Palmer similarity. And I'll explain in the next slide how this scoring mechanism works. So we take the word help, and then we look at the 3 synonym sets, and each synonym is scored with all the nouns occurring in the document. This is repeated for all 3 synonyms. And whichever concept has the highest score is selected as the disambiguated sense. So as you can see, these have been selected as the disambiguated senses for the noun. However, some of the words like biological and bio have been missed out, and we are left with slightly lower dimensions, which is a good thing for our representation. Using this, we build lexical chains. We consider 4 relationships: the synonym, hyponyms, and meridians and identity. Our lexical chains are formed by building a graph, and we build a graph based on the relationships I have said earlier, and then we score these chains. So these 3 chains from our running example: application technology with a score of 0.5, undertaking work with a score of 0.5, and period and idea with a score of 0.5. So let's consider the chain application and technology that we've got. Application, as you can see through the definition of WordNet, is the act of bringing something to bear using a particular purpose, and technology is a practical application of science and science to commerce or industry. Now you can see that there is a hyponym relationship between these two, which has been correctly identified. So this gives us a more semantically rich meaning of the text that we're considering. Now we need to weight these chains and score them in order to proceed. So first, we assign weights, which are simply just adding up the word frequency along with the disambiguated nouns if they occur. And then we score the chains. First, we multiply the weights by the identity relationship. And if it has any other relationship, we incorporate that including accordingly and add the results. Using that, we've generated lexical chains and we've scored them. However, there are a lot of lexical chains per document, and we need a mechanism to filter it out. So for that, we use this filtering mechanism in which we add the lexical chains and normalize them by their length. And use an alpha value. This alpha value can be adjusted to adjust the leniency of the system. If we want more lexical chains, we can lower the alpha value. And if we want less, we can increase it. So we saw that 1.5 works best and we get lexical chains. However, we do lack a few things. We lack statistical measure like TF-IDF, which has proven useful. And we can enhance the document vectors using topic enrichment. So to extract topics, we use a well-known technique, latent semantic analysis. Latent semantic analysis is a statistical technique. So we incorporate a statistical measure in our system. And the end, we also add semantic information as a topic of a document best represents that document. And hence, we incorporate that into our vectors, which gives us a more fuller and robust representation. These are the parameters that we use. We apply k-means clustering using the heuristic that n is equal to the number of classes. So let's analyze the dataset that we were working with. So initially we had a Reuters dataset and we incorporated multi-label documents as well. We can see that there are no visually separate boundaries using PCA projections. So we moved to single label dataset and using that we created different subsets. So a subset of minimum 10 and maximum 20 documents shows that any class that has a minimum of 10 to 20 documents is selected and it has to be single labeled. So using single label dataset, we were able to see slightly better boundaries, and this is the dataset that we went with. So these are the 2 subsets of Reuters and 2 subsets of News 20 that we have used. So to analyze the results, first starting off with TF-IDF, we were getting relatively poor results with F-score of 0.17 and purity of 0.32, but this was expected as it lacked the semantic meaning. Using just latent semantic analysis, the results were improved, but again, they could be further improved when we use word sense disambiguation. And once we apply word sense disambiguation using lexical chains, we can see that the score has been bumped up quite significantly with F-score at almost 3.2 and purity at 0.4. Now, does topic enrichment actually help? I think this can be best shown by a visualization. This is before topic awareness, our representation, as you can see. So before topic awareness, the cluster centers are usually trivially placed at one document per cluster, which obviously is not good. And some places are extremely dense. So after topic awareness, we can see that not only the cluster centers better represent the documents, they're more far away, which again is a quality of the cluster that the similarity between 2 clusters should be maximum. Okay, so discussing the results, we were up against TF-IDF and latent semantic analysis, and you can see that topic-aware representation outperforms it on all 4 subsets of the dataset. And we also see that it's interesting to add normalization to the representation, which does boost the F-score. These are the results that you can see. F-score and purity have been improved by the 2 methods that we're going up against on both metrics. And just to give a little comparison, purity for multi-label dataset was fairly good, but F-scores were really low. And as we know that purity and F-score go hand in hand in evaluation of the clusters. So as said previously, multi-label dataset did prove slightly poor results. It was interesting to note that the normalization of this representation boosted F-scores, but it lowered the purity. So this can be adjusted according to the dataset and the results that we are looking for. And again, to conclude, our system performs on non-hierarchical data rather than hierarchical data. So this comparative result shows that our system has a few feature works in which these can be incorporated as well. But so far, we are beating the TF-IDF and LSA on both the metrics. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll be willing to take them.
Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation and also sticking with the time. Inshallah, we'll keep questions later. Now we are going to move to Dr. Shekhar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so please prepare your presentation.
So I am audible, sir? I am audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, can I share my screen, sir?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sir. Is it visible, sir?
Yeah, I can see it. So just make it a full presentation.
Yeah. Now it is visible, sir, in full presentation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I start? Okay, sir. Very good afternoon, all the listeners and viewers across the globe. Myself, Shekhar Karanwal, I am research scholar in CSC Department of Graphic Era, deemed to University Dehradun, Uttarakhand, India. Today, I am like to present my research paper whose title is Improved LBP-based descriptors in harsh illumination variations for face recognition. Now, these are the contents which includes introduction, and then related works are defined, followed by the illustration of compared descriptors, which includes 3 descriptors: local binary pattern, horizontal elliptical LBP, median binary pattern. Then the improved descriptors are described with their frameworks, followed by the results, and then conclusion and feature scope with the references in the last part. Now, this is the introduction first part in which LBP is defined. LBP states as a local binary pattern, and it is regarded as one of the prominent and fruitful local descriptors in the literature. Now, the success of LBP is due to its monotonic gray invariance property and less complex method. These are the advantages of LBP, and due to which LBP is utilized in diverse range of applications like face recognition, texture recognition, object recognition, and many other applications also. Now, the concept behind LBP is that in LBP, basically 3x3 patch is considered, and all the neighborhoods are compared with the center pixel to obtain the decimal code for single position. Now, the decimal code is basically based on the comparison of the neighborhood's pixel values to the center pixel. And those neighborhoods having the pixel value greater or equal to center pixel are assigned a label 1, otherwise 0. And this is the binary pattern which is formed after the neighborhood pixels are compared to the center pixel. After weight deployment and adding values, the LBP code is derived for single position. The same concept is performed for all the position to form the LBP image. Now, from LBP image, there are 2 ways that it can be used as a histogram feature. Either it can be used as a global histogram feature, or it can be used as a regional histogram feature. Now, after LBP emergence, various LBP variants are launched in the literature. Now, the main drawback with these LBP and these LBP variants are that in extreme light variations or in extreme illumination changes, their performance are not satisfactory. That's why the improvements are suggested to 3 state-of-art descriptors, and these 3 state-of-art descriptors are local binary pattern, horizontal elliptical LBP, and median binary pattern. The improvements to these descriptors are necessary because in extreme light variations, their performances are not adequate. And the improvements are suggested by deploying 2-dimensional discrete wavelet transform before feature extraction is performed with these 3 descriptors. By applying 2-dimensional DWT, the input image is decomposed basically into 4 subbands. And these 4 subbands are basically the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal coefficients. After decomposing these 4 subbands by using Haar wavelet at level 1, then the feature extraction is performed these 3 descriptors. It is witnessed from the results that after evaluation, these improved descriptors comprehensively outperform the original descriptors by a very large margin. As features are extracted from the 4 coefficients, therefore feature size on the larger side. Therefore, for reducing the dimension, Fisher linear discriminant analysis is used for feature compression. And then finally, classification was adopted by radial basis function, which is support vector machine based method. And experiments are performed on 2 datasets that are Yale B and extended Yale B, which are very popular datasets. And after obtaining accuracy on these sets, the improved ones, which is include the combination of 2-dimensional DWT and the local descriptors, these descriptors comprehensively outperform the original descriptors. These are basically a slight introduction of the proposed work. Now, this is the related works in which some of the LBP variants are described. I am skipping this content due to shortage of time. This section basically contains some of the LBP variants which are introduced in the literature. Now, this is the illustration of compared descriptors. Now, I have, as described in the previous introduction part, that LBP is a very good texture analysis when it is implemented for normal light variations. LBP was basically developed for texture analysis. In LBP, as it can be seen in the bottom half of the figure, there is 3x3 patch, and in 3x3 patch, the neighborhood pixels are compared to the center pixel. And those neighborhoods having the value greater or equal to center pixel are assigned a label 1 or 0. As it can be seen that 15 is not greater than 19, therefore label assigned is 0. And those having the values greater or equal to center pixel are assigned a label 1. And after weight supplying, after binomial weight supplying to this binary pattern, the decimal values are added to obtain the LBP code for single position. By conducting this concept in all positions, there is evolution of LBP image. And from LBP image, the histogram size formed is 256. Now, this is a description of local binary pattern. Second descriptor is the horizontal elliptical LBP, which is developed for face recognition. And the only difference between HE-LBP and LBP is that in HE-LBP, horizontal elliptical pixels are utilized for comparison. As it can be seen, there are 8 horizontal pixels which are aligned elliptically, and these elliptical pixels are used for comparison with the center pixel. And thresholding concept remains the same as that of LBP. Therefore, HE-LBP, which is a horizontal elliptical LBP, developed the feature size of 256. Now, the third descriptor is a median binary pattern, which was developed for texture analysis. Now, as it can be seen in the bottom of the figure, that in MBP, there is also a 3x3 patch. And in this 3x3 patch, all the 9 pixels now compared with the median value of those. As it can be seen that in this patch, median value is 30. Therefore, all the pixels are compared with the median value. And those having the pixel value greater or equal to the center pixel are assigned a label 1, otherwise 0. Now, in MBP, there is an option of exclude or include the center bit. For this work, center bit is excluded. Therefore, 8-bit binary pattern is produced. And after supplying weights and adding values, the generation of MBP code for single position. And after obtaining MBP code in all the positions, there is generation of MBP image. And from MBP image, the histogram size formed is 256. Now, these are the description of 3 descriptors which lacks when their illumination conditions are severe. Now, this is the improved descriptors. I can explain with the help of this figure. This is the figure in which there is a top half, there is an input image, and then 2-dimensional discrete wavelet transform is applied to this input image at higher level, which results in 4 coefficients. First one is approximation coefficient, and rest 3 are detail coefficients, which are horizontal, vertical, and diagonal coefficients. Then on each coefficient, all 3 descriptors are deployed for feature extraction. And after deployment of feature extraction, then all respective features are added to develop the feature size of the respective descriptor. It is obvious that from one subband, the histogram size formed at 256. Therefore, from all 4 subbands, the feature size formed by all 3 descriptors, all 3 input descriptors is 1024. Therefore, FLDA is applied, which is Fisher's linear discriminant analysis deployed for dimension reduction, and finally classification was performed by support vector machines, which is from which radial basis function is utilized. This is the concept of the proposed method. Now, as far as the results are concerned, 2 datasets are utilized, YB datasets and EYB datasets. And both of the images of the YB and EYB are harshly affected by illumination variations, as it can be shown in this figure, that images are such harshly affected that it is very difficult to recognize the person. Some of the persons are very difficult to recognize. So to achieve discriminity in such conditions is a very difficult task. Now, this is the feature size details. As the original image size is the largest size, therefore feature size is restricted to 112 by 92 size. Then from this size, 6 descriptors are evaluated for feature extraction. The 3 are the descriptors which are defined earlier, and that's 3 are the improved descriptors which are found by applying 2-dimensional durability before feature extraction. And after applying FLDA, the feature size used by the classifiers are the feature size produced are 83 and 9. 83 is produced by applying the PCA, and 9 is produced by deploying LDA. And on EYB, 124 and 24 are produced by applying PCA and LDA. LDA size is the one which is used by the RBF classifier for evaluation. And all coding is performed in the MATLAB R2018 settings. And this is the accuracy calculation. How accuracy is calculated by using the formula. TS is the parameter used for test size specification, and minus WM. WM are the wrong matches, and divided by test size, total size into 100. So if test size is the 40 values and the wrong matches is 1 value, then total accuracy is 39 by 40 into 100. Now, these are the basically is a formula used for calculating the accuracy, and Tn is other parameter used for specification of training size specification. On YB, the Tn values are 5, 10, 15, and 20, and Ts values are 60, 55, 50, and 40. These are the different subsets which are created for forming the different subsets for measuring the accuracy on different subsets. Now, as it can be seen on 5 training size, if there are 10 subjects, then 50 samples are used for training, and the remaining 600 are used for testing. Similarly, on EYB, 5, 10, 20, and 30, and 59, 54, 44, and 34 are used for training and test size specification. On EYB, best recognition is measured after 25 runs are conducted, and on EYB, the best runs are recorded after 20 runs are executed. As it can be seen on the table 2 and table 3, that improved descriptors beats comprehensively the performance of the original descriptors. As it can be seen in table 2, that 2-dimensional DVT plus LBP achieves accuracy of 93.66%, which is much higher than the original descriptor 84.33 on training size of 5. Similarly, on training size of 10, it is completely outclassed by the improved descriptors. Similarly, the other improved descriptors comparatively outperforms the original descriptors on YB and both EYB datasets. This proves the efficacy of the improved descriptors as compared to the original descriptors. Now, this is a graph illustration which is can be elaborated from the table section. It is a graph from the table. Now, conclusion and future scope. This work suggests improvements to 3 state-of descriptors: LBP, HELBP, and MBP in harsh lightning variations. And the improvements were suggested by employing 2-dimensional DWT prior to feature extraction. And each input image was decomposed into 4 subbands, and then 2-dimensional, and then the LBP, HELBP, and MBP are deployed for feature extraction. The improvements are called as 2-dimensional DWT plus LBP, 2-dimensional DWT plus HELBP, and 2-dimensional DWT plus MBP. As it is obvious that feature size is on the larger size, therefore FLD is deployed for feature compaction, and classifications are performed by support vector machines. And on 2 datasets, EYB and EYB, the improved descriptors comprehensively outperform the original descriptors by a large margin. And there are numerous ways in which the proposed work is extendable to the future work. First, the regional feature extraction. Second, the integration of the improved descriptors with another robust and discriminative local descriptor, and testing of the proposed methods on other challenges and applications. All these factors will cover up in the forthcoming research. And these are the 13 references which are used for the proposed research. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shekar, for your presentation. And now, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to move to Dr. Zuhaib Ahmed. So, are you ready, Doctor? He's going to talk about a new hybrid approach of gravitational search algorithm with a spiral shaped mechanism-based RBF neural network. So, welcome, Dr. Zuhaib, and you have 10 minutes. We cannot hear you, Doctor. Your mic is mute, so please unmute your mic. Yeah.
So no use is clear.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
All right. Here is my article title: A New Hybrid Approach of Gravitational Search Algorithm with Spiral-Shaped Mechanism-Based RBF Neural Network. Here are authors title: Dr. Zuhaib Ahmed, Dr. Qasim Ahmed, Dr. Asma Mehman, Professor Dr. Praveen, and Dr. Muhammad Jafar Mehman. So here we start with contents that includes the abstract introduction, RBF neural network model, proposed optimization techniques, and 2 benchmark problems that are Mackey-Glass time series prediction, nonlinear system identification, conclusion, finally the references. So we start with the abstract. So in this article, basically to solve the nonlinear system modeling, a hybrid gravitational search algorithm with spiral-shaped mechanism-based RBF neural network is proposed, which is named as HGSA SSM RBF neural network. In the proposed model, basically the center, the width of neurons, output weights, network size of RBF are optimized by using the proposed algorithm. The proposed algorithm basically selects the updated particles location through the most suitable selection law that provide the exact matching in global and local search completeness. And 2 nonlinear system benchmark examples are performed in the end, the comparison of results achieved on the baseline methods. So here this is the introduction. Basically, due to the simple topological structure and rapid training speed, the RBF neural network have been widely used in many applications. For example, nonlinear system prediction, information processing, pattern recognition. The RBF neural network performance is basically closed based on the network structure. That's mean how to determine the optimal network parameters and network size. If the network parameters selected in randomly, the network satisfactory performance cannot be achieved. So this slide is show a basic RBF neural network model that has one input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. So the RBF neural network output is specified by the following equation that can be seen. The following equation where omega j denotes the output weight and phi j denotes the hidden neuron output, which is basically given by the Gaussian kernel function that can be seen in the following equation. So in this article, basically the parameters, for example, weight, center of hidden neurons, output weights, and total quantity of hidden neurons are adjusted in the training phase while by using the training data samples. So here we start with the optimization technique, the existing GSA, the gravitational search algorithm. The gravitational search algorithm has its basis on the optimization techniques, basically motivated by the law of gravitation. In this algorithm, agents supposed to be the objects. By using the law of motion and Newton gravity, the agents interact with each other. The initial population is generated randomly that consists of n agents. The position of each agent is computed by the following equation xi. So in the all agents in population all evaluated, the best worst agents were assigned. And there are following equations. For example, you can see the force and the acceleration of agent is calculated by the following equation. In the end, the velocity and position of agent are computed by the following equation that can be seen. So here in this article, we propose basically the hybrid gravitational search algorithm. So as GSA has some drawbacks, for example, getting stuck in local minima issue, and its convergence rate results in the reduction of solution consistency. So we must improve its search efficiency. So for this, we use the spiral shape mechanism. The primary benefit of spiral shape mechanism is that it can boost the detection of local maxima for gravitational search algorithm. And in SSM, the trade-off between exploration is implemented by adding more parameters like R1 and R2 and the position of the agent that has discussed in the previous slide. This is basically improved its position by the following equation that can be seen xidk of k plus 1. Where B in this equation, where B is a constant that controls the logarithmic spiral shape. This is random value between -1 and 1. So this slide is showing the proposed model design process where there are following steps. The first step is initialize algorithm parameters, population, total number of iterations, gravitational force, etc. And the step 2 is evaluate the fitness function for each agent. Among all agents, find the best fitness value. Step 3, calculate the position and velocity of all particles according to given equations. Step 4 is probability set to 80%, update the position of agent with spiral shape mechanism. This is basically improvement of a proposed model. Step 5, judge if current number of iteration approaches, the algorithm ends and generate the optimal solution, otherwise return to step 2. So this portion discuss the simulation results. So in this part, the root mean square error is used to test the network performance. That can be seen in the following equation where YD and YT denotes the predicted output and the real output. The smaller the RMSE value, the better the network performance. To demonstrate its efficiency, we performed 2 benchmark examples, Mackey-Glass and nonlinear system identification. First example is Mackey-Glass time series prediction. As a classical benchmark task for nonlinear system modeling, the Mackey-Glass time series generated by the following equation, where in this equation, we set A, B, and tau 0.1, 0.2, 17, and initial condition is set to x0 is equal to 0. In this example, we took 1,000 samples, among which 500 samples are used for training and 500 samples are used for testing. So here are the simulation results. The results on the left side that shows the prediction value of proposed model. So in this result, it can be seen that the output predicted by the proposed model closely matched with the real output. And the result on the right side that shows the prediction error for testing sample from 500 to 1,000. And it can be seen that the prediction error lies in the minimum range, like 0.02 to 0.03. In this slide, that figure shows the testing RMSE curve. This is basically shows the network performance of the proposed model, and this is against the iterations. Here is the table that can be seen that the proposed model achieved the less training RMSE and less testing RMSE as compared to RBF neural network, PSO RBF, and GSA RBF neural network. That shows its completeness compared to all other algorithms. So the second example is nonlinear system identification. The nonlinear system identification is used to practically elaborate the network performance. The equation of system is given as can be seen. So in this example, we took 2,000 samples, among which 1,000 samples are took for training, and the remaining 1,000 samples are used for testing. These are the results. The results on the left side show the prediction value of proposed model, and it can be seen that the output predicted by proposed model closely matched with the real output. And the figure on the right side shows the prediction error that can be seen. The prediction error lies in the minimum range.
Doctor, last minute, please.
Okay, sir. Okay. Okay, sir. Okay. So this figure shows the training RMS, testing RMSE value that shows the network performance, and this is the table that shows the proposed model achieved the less training and less testing RMSE compared to the other methods. So it is conclusion: to solve the nonlinear system modeling problems, a hybrid gravitational search algorithm with spiral-shaped mechanism based RBF neural network is proposed. In the proposed model, center width of hidden neurons, output weights, network size are optimized by using the proposed model. As shown in the simulation results, the proposed model outperforms other existing methods in terms of network compactness and prediction accuracy. Here references, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zohaib Ahmed, for your presentation. And we have the last paper in this session. And the author, they are not coming to the session. So we are going to play the recording, paper number 77, which is about identifying diabetics by retinal image classification using ROI, which is written by Dr. Umama Giswari, and Shiny Diola. So we are going to play this recording. أستاذ بريك ممكن نشغل؟
يا دكتور، هو الظاهر في مشكلة في الصوت يعني، بس أنا جالس أحاول الحين.
Okay. Because we cannot hear anything.
And my colleague Dr. Shiny Diola, Associate Professor in the same department, and my Professor and Head Dr. K. Raja. What is the outline of this particular presentation is motivation, background information, proposed method, results, summary, future work, references. What is the main motivation behind this work is, in the current situation, most of the people are affected with diabetics. This technique helps us to predict and prevent it in a better way. We know that diabetics is an incurable disease. Early diagnosis can help in maintaining the diabetics and be in a normal stage. There are 5 stages in diabetics were classified during diabetic retinopathy. In my work also, I am going to classify those things in this 5 stages. The cause of blindness is the important cause of diabetic retinopathy. So, if diabetics is identified in the earlier stages, that can avoid vision loss. The main objective of this project is to detect the changes caused in the retinal blood vessel due to diabetic retinopathy by convolution neural network. In ophthalmology, for diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy, digital color retinal images are becoming increasingly important. Diabetic retinopathy is caused by damage to the blood vessel in the tissue at the back of the retina. The severe cause of diabetic retinopathy may lead to loss of vision, so it is necessary to predict it in the earlier stage itself. Diabetics can be classified into the 5 classification: normal, mild, moderate, severe, and PDR. Normally, experts examine the colored images, that is our retinal images. This can be overcome by the automated system. So instead of manual diagnosis, we can go for automated systems. The ultimate aim of this work is automated diagnosis purpose only to identify the stages. In the literature survey, I have taken many number of papers. For this presentation, I have taken only 3. The first one is classification of diabetic retinopathy images by using deep learning model, presented in the International Journal of Grid and Distributed Computing. Suvajit Datta et al. Presented this. In this study, they have taken the fundus image containing the diabetic retinopathy has been taken into consideration. The idea behind this paper is to propose an automated knowledge model to identify the key incidences. Here, the limitation is pixel level accuracy is very less. Early stages are not identified, but for to achieve this objective, vision loss, we need to identify the diabetics in the mild and normal stage itself. Next paper, diabetic retinopathy early detection based on OCT and OCTA feature extraction. In 2019 IEEE conference, it has been presented. This is Nabibia Elavadi et al. In this paper, a computer-aided diagnosis system that can detect earlier signs of DIA using both optical coherence tomography and optical coherence tomography angiography images. Here, this particular system needs more number of training for large data set. Then only we can predict some better classification. Next one, automated diagnosis of referable maculopathy in diabetic retinopathy screening. It is presented in the 33rd Annual International Conference. Andrew Hunter et al. Presented this. Here, the algorithm uses a pipeline of detection and filtering of peak point with strong local contrast, and also for the automated diagnosis of maculopathy in retinal image for diabetics retinopathy screening. Here, hard to interpret the result. It is very sensitive to extreme values on variables. So to overcome all the issues in the existing, I'm going to propose some new concepts using deep learning based application. Consider this is the normal high retinal image. If it is having with a microaneurysm, and this is with some hemorrhages, and this is with some exudate. See, based on these values, if we are segregating using segmentation process, we are trying to segregate all these patches, that is hemorrhages and exudates and microaneurysm, then we can able to identify and classify at what stage the diabetic is it. Okay, so through this classification, we can avoid vision loss. Use some of the previously they were used a lot of fuzzy logic, Sobel and canny edge detection algorithm to detect the edges in these patches. Then segmentation has been used to segment these patches, and intrinsic characteristics of retinal images make the blood vessel detection process very difficult. So previous algorithms were so much poor in their performance, then it is not possible to cluster this exudates. See, lot of regions are there, lot of patches are there. So it is not possible to cluster all these things in the existing method. So in the proposed method, we are going to take the same RGB retinal image only as the input. The input is pre-processed with Gaussian blurring, bilateral filtering, and image smoothing. And the segmentation process is done with the ROI calculation. ROI means region of interest. And DR is classified into 5 stages, as we discussed already: normal, mild, moderate, severe, and PR. The proposed method, taking the input image, applying the image pre-processing here, image restoration, and image enhancement. Then features are extracted from this, that is exudates, microaneurysm, and patches are extracted here. Then blood vessel segmentation is done here. Then image classification. After applying the segmentation process, then we can able to identify under what classification currently that diabetic it is. Okay, then that output will be given, identified with the damages with the stages. Okay, this is the main purpose of the proposed method. Then for pre-processing, the raw image is in higher size. Then we need to resize this into 512 cross 512. Then for classification, better classification purpose, we are cropping the unwanted. We are cropping and sent out the unwanted places. We are taking only the region of interest for our processing purpose. Then what the Gaussian blurring is going to do, that is, we also should specify the standard deviation in the x and y direction, sigma x and sigma y respectively. If only sigma x is specified, sigma y is taken as the same as the sigma x. Image blurring is achieved by convolving the image with a low pass filter kernel. It is useful for removing noise. Sometimes some important parts also removed during noise removal. So we should be very much take care of this. So a lot of algorithms are available with OpenCV. In bilateral filtering, it's used to, it's highly effective noise removal while keeping edges sharp. So the problem occurs in image blurring will be overcome by using this bilateral filtering. So edges will be segmented very carefully. Then feature extraction and segmentation. For image classification purpose, we are taking gray level co-occurrence matrix GLCM is a way to extract second order statistical features. Then segmentation is the process of defining homogeneous pixels into these spectrally similar image segments. The goal of the segmentation process is to change the characteristics of the image into more meaningful ones, facilitating interpretation and classification. In this classification, we are taking only the ROI. For that ROI, we are doing the classification. What that CNN is doing, it's apply convolution filter in the first layer. The sensitivity of filter is reduced by smoothing the convolution filter. The signal transfers from one layer to another layer is controlled by activation layer. Fasten the training period by using rectified linear unit. The neurons in preceding layer is connected to every neuron in the subsequent layers. During training, loss layer is added at the end to give a feedback to the neural network. This is a normal neural network only, but it is giving better performance. See, this is the results I have taken from my system. In the first one is Gaussian blurring. Then after applying segmentation process, we can get the edges somewhat clear. Then this is the gray conversion. This is for normal image, so we are not getting any patches with the classification. Suppose if any patches are identified, then my system can able to give under what situation it is. This is the convolution neural network model introduced in this. Then according to the results, I have taken Mendeley database and DIAR8 database. In that, I have compared my proposed work convolution neural network with existing models, polynomial kernel SVM, neighbors, RBF kernel SVM, K nearest neighbor. Taken the parameters accuracy, specificity, sensitivity, and precision. See, when compared to the existing things, accuracy has achieved a better manner and specificity always maintaining with the existing systems, and so these two things are outperforms, and sensitivity also it's somewhat near with the SVM model, and so it is also outperforms, and in precision also it's looking good. This is the graphical representation of the result. So what's the conclusion about this project is the proposed method classified diabetic retinopathy based on various stages, which include severe, moderate, mild, normal, and PDA with higher accuracy, and also compared with various other classifiers. The proposed method outperforms all with good accuracy, specificity, and sensitivity. It is highly used to reduce the blindness which is caused due to this diabetic retinopathy. It can be predicted in the earlier stage itself. As we use order segmentation becomes more efficient. Then what's the future work the other researcher can able to take from this concept is, in future researchers can develop this into an application and also can detect cardiovascular diseases by this analysis of retinal images for low cost using this technique, and this can save lots and lots of people life. References, these are all the references I have used. I'm very much happy to present this important concepts in the Arab conference, and also I need to thank Kultan Subus University for giving me an opportunity to present this paper in this esteemed conference. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.
Okay, so by the end of this presentation, we have completed all the 7 papers in this session, and I would like to thank all the authors of these papers. Now I would open the floor for any questions from the audience. If you have any question for any paper, just please say your name, and then you can select or say any paper number, and then you can direct your question directly to the author of these papers. So please go ahead. You can either use your mic, or you can type your question in the chat space. Any question you have? Yeah, please go ahead. Any question? Another 10 seconds waiting for any question or any written question in the chat. Okay, so if there is no question, I will close this session by thanking all the participants to this session, and also all the authors who presented their papers on time. And I would like to wish you all the best during your future in research, and we can see each other, inshallah ta'ala, in future in a real conference in Oman or in any other country. So thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.